Now that the debates are over, the candidates face a furious race to the finish. Also today, voices of women voters.
I don't think it's fair to judge someone based on 4 years.
I feel that Romney would definitely be best for our country.
And the latest on the battle for the Senate. I'm Megan Lieberman, live from the New York Times newsroom. On the heels of last night's final debate, the candidates are back on the trail for the final push to Election Day. But first, Chief White House correspondent David Sanger and Romney reporter Michael Barbaro are here with the takeaway from last night. So the consensus seemed to be pretty clear that the president had the stronger, more commanding debate last night. Do we think that possibly his aggressiveness is going to play less well a day later, David?
Well, it could well, Megan. Certainly on all of the facts, he seemed more in command of them when they got into a debate over defense. He, of course, turned with that one line that everybody will be hearing later saying that, we no longer use horses, bayonets, and so forth. I think that is where he was right on the edge between more knowledgeable and possibly condescending. And that could be something that plays back at him in the next few days. Certainly, while he came out ahead, Mr. Romney, I think, did credibly well enough that he's not going to lose any points for having made any big mistakes. They played it very safe. The question is, did they play it too safe?
Yeah, Michael, did they play it too safe? There was a lot of questioning this morning about whether just trying to play to pass the bar of acceptability meant actually sort of looking a little weaker than he had in the other debates and maybe sacrificing an opportunity.
They don't think they played it too safe. I think we talked about this last night. There were conversations in the Romney campaign about the idea that this could emerge as a pretty boring debate, given the way that he had been prepared. They thought that was fine, because what they were trying to do was to head off, to preclude any possibility that he would look like somebody who was a warmonger, who was somebody who was looking for the next possible war to get into, the next possible place to put American troops. And I think you saw President Obama, maybe it was imperceptible even to him, not focus on the attack of Obama as somebody who was too premature in his instincts to go to war. There was only one mention of that line of attack. The rest of it was an attack on his readiness, confusion, all over the mapness. That was the way that President Obama attacked Governor Romney, not on the idea that he was trigger happy, and that was their goal. Romney did not want to emerge as anything but a measured commander-in-chief, and on that score they think they did quite well.
There was a very sharp and obvious pivot to the center on foreign policy from Mr. Romney last night. He's obviously done some of that in the previous debates. There's been a question of why make that, if you're going to make that turn, why make it so late? Why not have said, I'm going to pivot to the center during the conventions. I'm going to pivot over the summer.
Well, the convention's not a good place for the Republican nominee to forsake his party. I mean, that would just be a bad public relations move. What people inside the Romney campaign tell me was that they have discovered that debates are the single most important events and turning points of this campaign. We know that from the first debate.
Right.
So they are not exactly husbanding their news for the debates, but viewing them as the chance to present him anew. And the big thing they learned in that first debate especially was that the devil, as they call it, that Americans were expecting on domestic affairs didn't show up. And in the second debate, the devil they were expecting on foreign affairs didn't show up either.
David, were the things that didn't come up in last night's debate that surprised you? I saw a bunch of people on social media talking about the fact that Mr. Romney didn't mention veterans, which he hadn't mentioned in his convention speech, which got a lot of attention.
He didn't mention veterans. President Obama did, but only very, very briefly. A lot of big topics they never got to. Europe was barely mentioned
We've had no Eurozone
once.
in any of these debates.
Right. I mean, here you have an entire continent in fiscal collapse, not
Amazing.
a mention, which the Europeans view as typical American, being tuned out to anything
Right.
that isn't happening right in front of their noses. There was no mention of Latin America, Venezuela, Cuba at a moment that Castro is reportedly on his last legs. I mean, this debate happened, as Bob Schieffer noted at the beginning, on the 50th anniversary of the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And one of the obvious questions was, what lessons from that crisis do we have not only for the region, but for the Iran issues? Afghanistan, I thought, was barely touched, especially when you consider what incredibly critical decisions the next president is going to have to make about a series of issues in Afghanistan, lest the place really implode as we leave. So, some of this was that time was burned as each candidate move back to the domestic issues that they thought that viewers really wanted to go hear, even though much of that they had gone over in previous debates.
So speaking of the turn to the domestic issues, we now turn to the sort of final closing arguments for the campaign, and we already saw a new ad from President Obama this morning making his closing argument. So let's take a quick listen to that.
We've made real progress, and the last thing we should do is turn back now. Here's my plan for the next 4 years. Making education and training a national priority. Building on our manufacturing boom. Boosting American-made energy. Reducing the deficits responsibly by cutting where we can and asking the wealthy to pay a little more. And ending the war in Afghanistan so we can do some nation building here at home. That's the right path. So read my plan, compare it to Governor Romney's, and decide which is better for you.
So that was basically a sort of restatement of the president's closing statement from last night, which was pretty much his clearest articulation yet, I think, of what his plan for the next 4 years was. Is it enough of an agenda to run on at this point for the closing statement?
Well, you know, the president's also turned out this glossy book today that's supposed to give you the agenda for the next 4 years. You know, I think that the White House and the campaign have realized, a little bit belatedly, that they did a much better job early in the campaign as painting their opponent in very bright hues, and did a pretty poor job at describing what the president himself had planned for the next 4 years. They're making that pivot now. The question is that one a little bit too late as well? If he had been able to do that in the first debate, would he have not seen this collapse in the polls that certainly right now has a lot of the Democrats in a fair bit of panic?
You know, what Governor Romney's doing is he's making the argument he started at the convention, which is, I'm going to give you permission to give up on this president who gave you so much hope. And you saw some of that language creeping into the debate last night. That's essentially Governor Romney's closing argument. We've lost too much ground. Our power has receded. Those were some of the words he used in last night's debate. And what he's saying now is, there's no hope of getting that back. It's time to move on to someone else. And it's a very delicate thing because he knows there's such a reservoir of goodwill for this president. People wanted him to succeed. They may still want him to succeed. And this is not a blunt instrument strategy as much as it occasionally from the advertising can seem that way.
So the last 2 weeks, what do we expect to see? Is it too late, David, for an October surprise?
Oh, it's not too late for an October surprise. When you think about how little control either candidate would have over some of these surprises. I mean, you could see the North Koreans set off another nuclear test, which people have wondered about for a while. Wouldn't mean a thing strategically, but would certainly seem to step in at the same next moment. You could see developments with Iran. You could see another significant terror attack in Afghanistan, anywhere in the Middle East, that could help fuel the Romney argument that events are spinning out of the president's control. Now, a lot of these are never in a president's control. You have to remember that the attack in Lebanon that killed more than 240 Americans happened in Ronald Reagan's time. 9/11 happened in George Bush's time. The attack on the Cole happened in Bill Clinton's time.
But timing is everything.
But timing is everything. That's right.
Thanks so much, guys. One of the most sought-after voting groups this election is women, yet they're far from a unified voting bloc, and some of them are still not decided.
Now I don't know what I'm going to do.
Seriously?
Seriously. Look at the way things have been going with the country, and now it's just we're not in a good place.
I'm Kit Seeley with the New York Times. Women are a huge part of the electorate, obviously. They account for more than 52% of the vote. We came to Rockingham County, New Hampshire, a battleground within a battleground, where Barack Obama won in 2008 by less than 1% of the vote. So women here are very divided.
And I definitely do plan on voting for Mitt Romney, to be honest. Romney just seems to be more organized. He's a businessman. Some of his policies I don't agree with. Some I do. I'm a woman, so obviously I believe in women's rights.
I will vote for Obama, but only to vote against Mitt Romney. Mitt was accusing Obama of not doing anything the last 4 years for the economy, but I think it's going to take 10 to 20 years to fix the damage.
What are the most important issues to you?
Family first, women's rights first, because I'm a single mom. Not on welfare, I do work, I don't collect food stamps, but my kids need healthy kids for insurance, so they're on Medicaid, and I don't want that messed with.
I would vote for anyone besides Barack Obama. I've been greatly disappointed and upset in the way the country has gone.
I just got my grandchildren some clothes, and now it's my husband's turn. That poor guy gets clothes once a year, you know, if he's lucky. Right now he's waiting on boots, and he's been waiting on boots for about 4 months. They have to be steel toe, and it's like we just can't afford it. And to be honest, we go hungry a lot. It's not like it used to be where there's all kinds of options. There aren't any options anymore. To be honest, I'm thinking Barack Obama again. I just don't like Romney's outlook. I think you're either rich or you're poor in his eyes. I do wish there was another choice in between, but I think right now, at this point, it's very critical that we pick the right president. I really do, because we're in trouble.
Historically, women voters have favored Democratic candidates, and President Obama has benefited from this. But now, both campaigns are fighting for the female vote, knowing that women aren't just a narrow constituency, they're likely to determine the outcome of the election.
The presidential race is not the only one facing a close finish. Deputy Washington Bureau Chief Carl Hulse is on the line from Washington with the latest on the battle for the Senate. Hi, Carl. So, Carl, who'd have thought 6 or 8 months ago that the Democrats would actually be in a position to hold on to the Senate?
Right. I think that's probably one of the big surprises here at the start of the year. Looking at the Senate landscape, everybody thought the Republicans were almost a shoo-in, really, to get the majority back. They had 10 seats up, Democrats 23 seats in tough spots. So the fact that the Democrats are in position to hold on is a surprise in itself.
Let's talk about some of the marquee races. Massachusetts, which obviously has gotten a ton of attention.
Sure, that's one of the biggest ones.
Elizabeth Warren's had a lead there. Is she going to win back Teddy Kennedy's seat?
Well, I can't say. We'll know in 2 weeks. But I think right now people think she's in a pretty good position, partially because of the presidential race there. Obviously, the president's going to run pretty strong. It's a math problem for Scott Brown. He's got to get an awful lot of Democrats who vote for the president to then vote for him. And I think people think that's going to be tough, although he's certainly not out of it by any stretch.
Now, one of the places where the Democrats are actually in danger of losing a seat is Connecticut, where Linda McMahon is running a surprisingly strong race, isn't she?
You're right. That is probably on the Democratic side one of the biggest surprises. They did not want to be in a fight there at this point. She's an experienced candidate now. You know, she lost the last time. And one of her recent moves, it's kind of interesting, really. She has a new ad where voters who say they're going to vote for Obama then say, but I'm going to vote for Linda McMahon. She's appealing directly to the ticket splitters, saying you can vote for the president, but you can also vote for me. Now, how the Mitt Romney campaign takes that, I'm not sure, but it's a clear message, and that one's going to be tough. And at the end of the day, that could be one of the ones that tips the balance.
Another one that could tip the balance is Virginia. Is that a place where we could also potentially get a split result with Tim Kaine winning and Mitt Romney winning?
I think that people thought that probably couldn't happen at the beginning, that Mitt Romney could carry Virginia and Tim Kaine, the Democrat, former head of the DNC, former governor, could still beat George Allen. The idea was that there would be a wave there if Governor Romney won. Now I think people see there is a chance for Governor Romney to carry the state, but Tim Kaine to win. I think right at this moment, as you know, that the state probably maybe slightly favors the Republican presidential candidate, but Kaine is doing okay. So there's another ticket splitting state, and I do think that that's another one that the control of the Senate hinges on, obviously.
Let's talk about Missouri. We can't forget Missouri. What's the latest on Todd Akin?
Well, obviously that has been one that everybody has been watching very closely. The polls, I actually talked to someone there today, said it's been tough to poll with the Cardinals in the playoffs. So they're not really sure where things stand exactly, but I think the idea is right now that Senator McCaskill, of course, in a tough contest with Todd Akin, it could be hers to lose, but you know, a lot of people think, well, she should be extremely far ahead after all the attention focused on his remarks about rape and some other comments. But he has come back with some tough attacks on her husband's business dealings in the state. There's a history of focusing on Senator McCaskill's family finances. So right now, she's probably the favorite to win. I think Republicans in Washington continue to think that she will probably pull it out.
Carl, there's some unexpectedly tight races. One that I've been interested in is Indiana, which seems like about as red a state as you get, but is actually pretty close, right?
Right. Monica Davey for the Times was there recently, wrote a great story about it, that Richard Mourdock, who beat Senator Lugar in the primary, very conservative candidate, who at the time he was elected, his claim was that he would never compromise while he was in Washington. Well, that's been used against him by the Democrats out there. How can you come here and not compromise? They've really hit him on that issue. As Monica pointed out, he now says, well, I'll work with anybody that will work with me. However, I think there's still a lot of Lugar voters out there who are disappointed Republicans in that state, and they are looking at Joe Donnelly. I think that it's going to be close. I think you'd have to give the Republicans still a bit of a nod there, but it's another one of those things. These races are all continuing to stay close. There doesn't seem to be any wave developing in these Senate races. So we're going to really have to see who comes out and votes.
Thanks, Carl. Before we go, a lighter moment from the campaign trail this morning. Scott Van Duzer, who famously lifted the president off the ground during a stop at his pizza shop last month, is back. He introduced Mr. Obama at an event in Delray Beach this morning. The president got another hug, but this time his feet stayed firmly on the ground. That's all for today. Stay with us online for more on Campaign 2012. I'm Megan Lieberman. Thanks for watching.